Francis of Assisi, to help people understand the reality, the truth, the humility of Jesus's birth, had the people in Greccio act out this manger scene. There wasn't a child, but had all the animals and the straw. Like, in this situation, this is where Christ was born. Welcome to the second season of the Laughing.Mystics, an unorthodox journey through the liturgical year with Laura Lewis Barr and Marcy Mederi.
We are setting up right now for the Epiphany of the Lord.
Aha.
Mm-hmm.
The Epiphany.
Mm-hmm. How do you define that word, epiphany?
I think of it as an awareness, as a new understanding, as that aha moment.
Nice. Well, related to that, my question is a memory of an unusual or an unexpected place I found God. As they all did this night in terms of this story, they all did find Jesus in an unexpected, unusual place. So, a memory of that. Do you want me to go first?
Please, because I'm a little stumped right now.
I know. I'm
gotta
stumping
think.
myself lately with these questions. And when I thought about it, I am cheating a little and thinking ahead now. Partly because I just want to make sure they're answerable, you know? But my answers I wasn't that thrilled with. But what came up for me is finding God. I certainly felt, this is really strange, but I certainly felt like I had an encounter with God in Greece when I got the bells, the night I got the bells. And it was a numinous experience. It wasn't the illness itself. It was this feeling I had of God. It's hard to explain. And there was another time in my life that was a very challenging. I was in Irvine, California. I was at a theater event that was very scary for me. And I remember waiting for my turn to do an audition for a very famous theater guy. Any theater people out there would know Jerzy Grotowski. And so as I waited to audition, all I kept feeling was like I was at the crucifixion. Like the crucifixion was very alive for me in that moment. And so why these two really challenging moments come up for me. But I think that is how I'm wired. Like when things are really challenging, I really feel the presence of God.
In listening to you, I think of a moment when I was working for the Franciscan Sisters in La Crosse, and there was a sister. She was older than me, and I was sure she didn't like me. I was very convinced. And my coworker, who was another sister, said, "I'm not sure she thinks that you like her." And I was like, "Oh, I can do something about that. That I can do something about." So I went and I sat down in her office, and we had a really nice conversation, which was the beginning of a great working friendship, because we worked together quite closely after that. And it's just like something changed, like God was in our midst in that moment.
Nice story. So listeners, you can share with us if you want to. Where is an unusual or unexpected moment where you found God? A reading from Isaiah. Rise up in splendor, Jerusalem. Your light has come. The glory of the Lord shines upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick clouds cover the peoples. But upon you the Lord shines, and over you appears his glory. Nations shall walk by your light, and kings by your shining radiance. Raise your eyes and look about. They all gather and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters in the arms of their nurses. Then you shall be radiant at what you see. Your heart shall throb and overflow, for the riches of the sea shall be emptied out before you. The wealth of nations shall be brought to you. Caravans of camels shall fill you, dromedaries from Midian and Epoch. All from Sheba shall come, bearing gold and frankincense, and proclaiming the praises of the Lord.
What a beautiful reading that is.
It really is such poetry.
I love that imagery of light, like the rising, the sun rising, the shining, the radiance, the splendor. It just makes me think of like this gold, beautiful light. Well, I was really curious about Midian and Ephah. Who are they? What are they? And why are they in this reading? In my commentary that I was reading, it was, they're named to say all the people are going to be coming together.
When I was looking at this, I was struck by something that I read recently that just kind of came across my internet feed, and it was Rene Girard. Do you know him?
Mm-hmm.
I bet
Yes.
you read him
Yes.
in grad school or something. Rene Girard, who has a very interesting backstory that maybe I'll mention, but he was the guy who realized that ancient civilizations kept themselves from constantly being at war by having a scapegoat, and that killing a scapegoat, a person often, could be animals, but a person, was a way that everyone could get together and have their aggression directed at this scapegoat, and then the community would have this equilibrium. And what Girard said was that the Hebrew prophets were the ones that started to change this. And he said that when the Hebrew prophets started to say, God is on the side of the weak and the vulnerable and the widow, and that scapegoat system started to unravel. And Girard, who I read today, I discovered him a few days ago, and I was like, wow. I read that John Paul II, Girard was his favorite Catholic thinker.
I did not know that.
And that Girard wrote about how Christianity was the only way that we can deal with the fallout of moving beyond the scapegoat system. And that Christianity is a model where the innocent one, Jesus, is taking the place of the scapegoat. And Girard says, we all have to convert and imitate Christ, and that is the only way beyond the cycle of violence. And so just one more thing about that is we certainly see the scapegoating constantly happening today on both of the political divides. And Girard said it's a system that worked for so long that there is in humans this desire for it, which is why people can get caught up in that scapegoating of the other side. So here we see that nations shall walk by your light and kings by your shining radiance, that Israel is leading the way toward a new way of being.
Right. And this is obviously pre-Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But just because of Rene Girard, I just wanted the listeners to be aware that this is that kind of that paving the way for Jesus to be the final scapegoat. And the Israelites did have that tradition, the Yom Kippur, of having two goats. One is being sacrificed, and one everybody puts all their sins on, and it's chased out into the desert. It's beaten out into the desert, which is where the name scapegoat comes from.
Yeah.
But I love the connection to this reading. I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah. And the second stanza, where we're talking about riches and wealth, I think we could also read that stanza about the internal life. Like the first part, we can think about the historical if we wanted to. And the second part, that as we move in God's way, as we follow God, that we have the riches, that we have the wealth psychically.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, those are just some thoughts I had.
Whenever I hear this reading, I think of actually the Beatles song, Here Comes the Sun.
Oh.
Do-do-do-do-do. It was funny. It was just a couple weeks before Earl died, and I woke up and the light was coming through the bedroom window, and I heard that song in my mind, and I had such relief, right? It's all right. It's going to be all right. And I said that to Earl, and he laughed at me because he knew he was dying. But the song wasn't for him. It was for me, to let me know it's going to be all right. And that rising, here comes the sun. And that's what I get from this reading.
Well, and I'm hearing the story of finding God in an unexpected place.
Yes, right. That was just so soaked with grief and the anticipation of death. You know, like that bit of light. I also notice, and will appreciate the difference in the gospel, that Isaiah talks about people were bearing gifts of gold and frankincense, but not myrrh. I'm sure you know, Laura, myrrh is the oil that anoints dead bodies. So when Jesus receives myrrh, it's a foreshadowing of his death and the importance of his death with his birth, that connection.
Right.
But Isaiah does not include myrrh, just gold and frankincense. Gold for a king, frankincense for a priest. This is a reading from Ephesians. Sisters and brothers, you have heard the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for your benefit, namely, that the mystery was made known to me by revelation. It was not made known to people in other generations, as it has now been revealed to his apostles and prophets by the Spirit, that the Gentiles are co-heirs, members of the same body, and co-partners in the promise in Christ Jesus through the gospel. Mic drop.
Why do you say that?
Well, this is like a big deal, that Gentiles are co-heirs, that they're partners. You know, non-Jewish people are a part of those who get to be saved.
You know, we have such distance from these events, and we know these events, but the cataclysm of what was happening for these people at the time, that must have been mind-blowing, and that they had the ability. So that is a perfect, mic drop. I get it. Yeah.
Right. And that I appreciate that it's a new revelation, which gives me hope that we can today have new revelations about who's included, how wide, how big God's love is. I mean, it's just crazy how big it is. And so, it makes me think of Teilhard, and that evolution of the spirit of people, that we can be more and more inclusive.
We are on the same exact wavelength here, because I wrote in my book, the evolution of God continues. What is coming in the evolution of God? LGBTQ and the inclusion of all
Mm-hmm.
types of love. What else is evolving? If we talked about moving from the scapegoat and letting that go, and now moving toward a more inclusive tent of love, what else? I'm trying to think, what did Teilhard and Elia, what are they telling us is coming, or what do we sense is coming? What do our listeners sense? I prayed the other day that church leaders can stay awake to the evolving needs of the church or the world. In reading a little bit more about Gerard, one person, I'm posting all of this on Facebook, one person said that if we try to be modern without Christ, then we fall into caring for the quote victim, but we are not nonviolent about it. And so we're violent in the way we try to help, as in war is the big example.
Sure.
So that's the
sure.
evolution maybe we are at right now, is that we are still in this scapegoat cycle. And how do we, people like Martin Luther King or Gandhi were moving us toward recognizing the power of nonviolence, but we're not wired that way, unfortunately, it seems.
Well, it feels like there's both in me, that I can, without thinking, move towards scapegoating someone or a group of people. Sure, I can do that. But there's also a part of me that can rise above that can move beyond that. And that does give me hope for the next generation and the generation after that.
Yeah.
That, evolution isn't quick. It's
right.
slow.
Right.
So it's, to be patient with that too.
Yeah, and we've said this before, that our daily lives and our daily struggles are part of the evolution.
Yes.
And that we are doing our tiny, tiny part. And that gives life meaning for me.
Yes. Me too. It makes me smile on the inside. It's that rising of the sun, here comes the sun.
Yeah. And we take for granted, again, this idea of the Gentiles were included, but what a painful shift that might have been for a lot of people who had been raised with just a different chosen people mindset, as we all can be in that mindset, my people.
Right. And it's a good question for me to hold, when am I keeping someone at bay, and why? Why do I feel like I need to be special in that moment? And who is it? Who am I excluding, or who doesn't get to be saved?
Yeah.
Who's the us and who's the them?
Gerard, in terms of my reading, this idea that we can be influenced by better angels, where people are rising to do good, and we can be influenced that direction, or we can be influenced to the mob mentality that wants to do violence, that it's a mimetic quality that humans have, that we are influenced by what we see and we move toward.
And, we all need to pray for Laura because she hangs around me.
It's been so good for me. My God, if you guys knew me a few years ago.
The other piece of this reading, or phrase in this reading, I really enjoy is the stewardship of God's grace, being a steward of God's grace. And what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Right. Well, a steward I think of as someone who doesn't own it, but it's entrusted to a steward, whatever it is entrusted to the steward. And the steward is to use it well and to use it wisely. And so somehow God's grace is entrusted to us that we can use it and share it with others.
It's a word that I only associate with people who work on cruise ships, the steward, who will get me something. Do you have another association with the word?
Well, Jesus in his parables, uses the word steward.
Okay, but I mean a
like
modern.
landowner. Um, I'd like the waiter,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
But it is also someone who brings things, right? So if I'm a steward of God's grace, how do I bring grace?
Yeah. Something that I'm noticing is the word revelation. And I know we're going to talk about that more next week, but that revelation is what drives so much of this evolution. These moments of revelation that propel, and that goes back to our original question, this idea of when have I encountered God as an experience? Jung was asked very late in his life, do you believe in God? And Jung said, I don't believe I have experienced God. It was so central to who he was. It wasn't an intellectual idea. And I noticed that here, this idea of being driven by this encounter that the writer has.
Well, and I like the word revelation on this Feast of the Epiphany, because that's what an epiphany is, right? Is that revelation, that new understanding, that new awareness, and that it's, it's not something that happens to other people. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, if we're lucky.
Well, but that God can speak to all of us, not just to in power, not just to leaders. God speaks to all.
Yeah.
And that I'm aware of God speaking to me when my heart is ablaze.
So are you saying that when you have these experiences of God, that you have a physical feeling in your body?
Yes. And I think of that walk to Emmaus with the couple, and Jesus comes and chats them up a little bit. And afterwards, that's what they say. We're not, our hearts on fire when we talk to Jesus, When we encounter God, our hearts, my heart is full. I know I've mentioned it on this podcast before, but that little video by Richard Rohr, that Christ is in all things. And my heart is more open. It is on fire when I watch that and I think about Christ being in all things, in everything.
I think some people are gifted as mystics. I think all of us probably can be, but like some people get musical talent, some people get artistic talent. I felt different from a young age that I would have these experiences. The gospel is according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage. When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophets.
And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. Since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people, Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word, that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out, and behold, the star that they had seen rising preceded them until it stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house they saw the child with Mary his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. I love that the stars are included in this, and that Jesus is a cosmic savior. The whole cosmos is aware of the birth of this child, Son of God. Everything, all the mysteries. So, we have the Magi, and, in our little Christmas creches, we often have 3 kings, but just to note, it does not say 3 Magi.
Oh, so it doesn't say biblically, but where do we get the names? Because we have names of them too.
Right. It's more legend. There were probably more than 3 Magi, a group of people.
Well,
who were astrologers and astronomers.
Right. And you're taking this, it's a beautiful story. And I think when I was putting myself in it today as a dream, it's very dreamlike.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not this actually happened, it's such a juicy story. And so I'm wondering, Marcy, we have animals, a bunch of different animals. We have angels, shepherds, the kings, and the Holy Family. And if this was a dream, what part would be most like pulling at you? Like where do you find yourself leaning toward? Which characters?
I think the lambs.
Tell me why.
Because they're meek. I'm not sure I would say that I'm meek, but there's something about that draws me, that they can offer warmth in a gentle way.
I asked myself this question earlier, and I had this similar answer, which was the animals. I didn't specify, but that animals are kind of naturally hooked to the divine. They don't have to work at it the way we do. They just are what they are.
Yes.
So beautifully. And so these images of the cows and the sheep, and are there other animals? Donkey, that sacredness of the animal pulled toward me too, as I thought about it. And so it goes to what you were saying earlier, like this Christmas miracle, this birthing of the divine child is connected to the whole, all the parts.
Right. All of creation, all of humanity, all living creatures, and all of the cosmos. It's all.
I find it, again, in a dreamlike way, we have this star that's moving. We're following it, and then it stops moving. So, it's a metaphor. And so what does it mean to follow a star? And I should mention, and I have this wonderful quote from Jung. He says, "Astrology represents the sum of all the psychological knowledge of antiquity." That the people of the ancient world, it was a science to them, that they really spent a lot of time. And the writers of the Bible really were into astrology as a science. And that's beyond my pay grade to really, I don't know much about it, but, it's a metaphor. Jung is saying it's a metaphor of psychology, What is it to follow a star? What is it to be connected to a star? Our own star? I don't know.
Well, and it's the noticing. How does the natural world change my life? How do I make decisions by paying attention to the natural world?
Well, and I think the part of the science of astrology was as above, so below, so that the cosmos has a certain order to it, as does our bodies, as does our lives. And Jesus comes into that, and it's noticed, as you say, by all.
King Herod, or Herod the Great, his title was the King of the Jews, which, the Magi come and say, where is the newborn King of the Jews? So immediately Herod is on edge because of that. And that is what is on Jesus's cross, the King of the Jews. So again, that connection between this moment and Jesus's death and resurrection.
Yeah.
I also like the dream, that the Magi are warned in a dream not to return to Herod because, Mary has dreams, Joseph has dreams, and now the Magi have dreams. And we've talked about that. It's such a beautiful way for God to communicate to humanity is through dreams. So these Magi are really wiggy in a wonderful way.
Part of the reason why I don't see this as an actual event is if the Holy Family got a gift of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, Joseph wouldn't really have to work anymore. I think I always sort of wondered what happened to all that gold, frankincense, and they gave it away or whatever happened.
I guess I thought that it paid for their way to Egypt and back.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I'm not sure, even in legend, how long after Jesus's birth the Magi came, because they're in a house. They're not in
the manger
They're
anymore?
not in the manger anymore. They went to the house.
Oh, yeah.
And that Herod had boys 2 and under killed. So Joseph and Mary and baby Jesus hanging out in Bethlehem for a while.
Right. And so it's fun to imagine the, quote, true story, but it's purposely opaque so that we don't have to, and we can use it for ourselves, right?
Yes.
And so, we have images of the humble and the royal bowing to the humble. And so how does that play out in me as an inner reality of integration of what is royal and what is humble, and images of wealth, lots of images of wealth. And what does that mean in my inner life?
And what do I do when I find God? Whether, I've been searching and following for a while, or it's completely unexpected. How is my humility and patience? How does that come forward? Does it come forward?
Yeah.
Do I notice? Am I more like Herod or am I more like the Magi?
Yeah, the Magi are really, and they are the foreigner that comes from afar. And when I have dreams of being in a foreign country or being visited by a foreigner or anything foreign, I think about it being something foreign to me, to my psyche, something new, something that I maybe might feel threatened by. It's not part of my home. And so we are in a place of integration, wealth. It's a beautiful scene except Herod is in the background.
Yes. The destroyer and destroyer of innocence.
Right.
That's really kind of what he's known for in history.
Yeah, envy. One of his sins, or where he is not well, is this envy that takes hold of him.
And deep insecurity that he's going to be replaced.
Right. Well, I think the last thing I want to say is that these nativity scenes, these physical objects that we have in our homes
Mm-hmm.
are precious and they're unusual. I mean, they're more special to me than a Christmas tree or an Advent wreath. What is it about them? I mean, anyone who knows the art I do knows that I love miniatures. So and they're archetypal. Miniatures are archetypal. But what is it about them? Because this reading is that come to life on a coffee table or
Right. I don't know. The little miniatures makes it more real somehow. Francis of Assisi, to help people understand the reality, the truth, the humility of Jesus's birth, had the people in Greccio act out this manger scene. No, there wasn't a child, but it had all the animals and the straw. Like, in this situation, this is where Christ was born. And so Francis is often credited for creating our little Christmas crushes, our nativity scenes. But all of a sudden it turns the story into reality, something I can really engage, something that actually happened. And for me, it makes it real in my heart too.
Yeah, interesting. I'll say it in a different way and see if this is true for you. It's a work of art. You know, there are crutches that are, well, I got to see, Naples has very famous ones that are like the size of a room and they just have like 100 shepherds and all these animals. It's like huge and amazing. So they are works of art of various levels, and they are, like any art, a moment frozen in time that I can meditate on. I guess that it's taken me a minute to figure it out, but for me, freezing that moment in 3 dimensions, not in 2, is what makes those so special. And I'm just a sucker for those. If you can see these massive ones, and throughout Italy they have a lot of them.
Yes, somehow or another I can transport myself into this 3D art.
This diorama.
Yes. Like I can be in it somehow.
More than in a painting.
Yes. We're still in the middle of Christmas season, so if you still have your Christmas decorations up, keep it going. Don't let your grinchy neighbors tell you to take them down too soon.
In the dark of winter, it's really helpful. Thank you so much for being with us as we, Marcy and I, we never know what we're going to say, and it's so fun to discover together. And thank you for being with us as we do that. And my hope is that you will share our podcast with some people that you know as we get into the second season, and we're hoping to expand our reach and have more people in our listening community, and maybe see us on Facebook too.
And a shout out to Michaela. She is a listener in Colorado, a lovely woman. And she does share this with her friends and neighbors. So thank you, Michaela.
Thank you.
We appreciate it very much. And we appreciate all the listeners.
So much.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Marcy.
Until next time.